everyone, and welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. For those of you who don't know, I'm Bia, and Cardiac Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together and talk and learn about Spiritist teachings in a way that we understand, and we make it easier for us to understand rather than listening to an adult explain it or a book explain it in complicated words. So hopefully we can get these teachings and understand them better and put them in our own lives and in our own perspectives and how that applies to us today. For the past several weeks, probably months at this point, we've been going through the Spirits book together, reading it piece by piece so we understand what the book is actually talking about and putting it in our own words, because some of the words and the phrases they put is kind of confusing, and to just sit down and read it is so much. So hopefully when we break it up piece by piece every week, we can understand it and comprehend and put it into practice little by little instead of just reading the book all at once. But for this week, since Christmas is on Sunday, I'd like to take a little break from that, and today we'll just have a quick show about Christmas and the beginning of Christmas and Jesus' birth. And of course the topic of Jesus can go on forever and ever and ever, and I know that everyone's running around frantically trying to finish their last minute presents and shopping, but so we'll just keep it short and we'll hit some key points about Jesus, because there's so much we could talk about, but we'll just focus on some few little aspects. So while we get so caught up in presents and who we're giving this to what person's giving us a present, what are we getting our parents, what are we getting our siblings, what lights we're going to put up, what tree we're going to get, having Christmas break. Everyone wants a Christmas break. We're not even thinking about Christmas itself. We're just thinking, I just don't want to be in school. For college students, that may be a month. For high school students, that may be 2 weeks or a week. And we're all focused on so much stuff, getting ready, all these last minute things so we can have a good break, but sometimes we forget the real meaning of Christmas, which is about celebrating, and at least for one day, everyone is concentrating on Jesus. Of course, we should all concentrate and thank Jesus every day, but this is one specific day that we can take extra time to do that, and extra time to be with our family and to enjoy all that we have. So I found a website called whychristmas.com, and it kind of gives a brief little story of the birth of Jesus and the beginning of this whole Christmas celebration. And so we'll just read through it piece by piece and putting it into our own words so we comprehend it. And it's not very long, but hopefully we can understand at least the basics of what was going on at the time. So the first section here, it's a passage from the Bible from Luke, and it goes, "In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governing Syria, and everyone went to his own town to register." So basically here what they're saying is that a census, if you don't know, it's like now when the government is trying to see what our population is, so every 10 years they send a census. So they send like a paper in the mail, and then everyone fills it out. Oh, we have this many people in our family, we make this much money, or whatever else information they're asking. So they're saying that this was the first Caesar. He wanted to create a census. He wanted to see what the Roman world was like, splitting up by towns. And then it continues. "So Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, to the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to marry him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to him, to her firstborn son. She wrapped him in cloth and placed him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn." So here what they're saying, so the census had to be in your own town. So say you live in New York City, but you were on vacation in California. So then when the census was taking place, it had to be in your town, so you would have to go back. You had to go from California, you had to go all the way back to New York to fill out the census, and everyone had to do it. Especially at that time when consequences were so high, they still believed in an eye for an eye rule. They believed in if you in physical punishment that was very harsh. So you had to do what he was saying. So they went across many towns, and Joseph, Jesus' father on earth, they were going to their hometown to go register for this thing, and Mary was with him because they were getting married, and she was pregnant. She was expecting a child. But then they say on her way there, she gave birth to her son, which we know is Jesus. And we'll go into more details later of what a manger and what all she was saying about wrapping him in cloth, because there wasn't any room, because everyone was moving around because of the census and having to go back to their home place, that there wasn't a place for them to stay. So they actually stayed in a barn where the animals were. And a manger is that like food bowl. It's like long, and it's the food place for animals, for pigs and goats or whatever else it is. So that was the passage from the Bible, and then they go into their own little explanation. The census that was ordered by Caesar Augustus was the first of its kind. It was done because the Roman government wanted to make sure that everyone in the empire was paying their taxes correctly. The census was carried out all over the empire, but in Palestine it was carried out in a Jewish rather than Roman way. This meant that families had to register in their historical tribute town rather than where they lived. This also meant that Joseph and the very pregnant Mary would have to travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem, as this was the town that Joseph's family, the royal family of David, originally came from. A journey of about 70 miles. So here they explain more about the census. So the census, they wanted to see if everyone was paying their taxes. So they wanted to get information on that. But the way that they were carrying out is that it didn't matter where you live now. So say, like we were saying before, New York City and maybe San Francisco and California. Maybe you used to live in New York, you were born in New York, but then you moved to California. It doesn't matter that you moved to California and you've lived there for 20 years. They still want you to register in New York City. So you have to go all the way back there to register. And so this meant that they had to travel, Joseph and Mary, they had to travel 70 miles. And at that time, we didn't have cars that we can go 70 miles so quickly. We didn't have planes. We didn't have any of that stuff. They just walked. So they had to walk or take a camel or something. So they were just on their own, and she was very pregnant, and they had to make this long journey to go fill out the census. Then it continues. The journey would have taken about 3 days, and they might well have arrived in the evening, because if they had arrived earlier in the day, it is more likely that they would have found somewhere to stay. So, of course, people aren't exactly sure, because at that time, like we were saying, they didn't have smartphones to record everything in, they didn't have computers, they didn't even have pencils and paper that we have. Of course, they had a way to write, but not the way we do, so they didn't have ways to preserve it, so it's not written in stone, and a lot of things went by word of mouth. But one of the things is that it probably took them 3 days walking or camel or traveling, however they were, and when they most likely got there at night because they couldn't find anywhere to stay once they got there. And then it continues. In those times, there weren't really such things as motels or inns. You normally would have stayed with some extended family or relations. A more accurate translation of inn would be guest room. You would normally stay with extended family in their guest room, but as it was a busy time, the guest room was already full. So it isn't like how it is now, how there's millions of hotels everywhere. If you get stuck somewhere, you can just find a hotel or a motel or an inn to stay in. It wasn't like that. They didn't have that there. So what you would do if you were traveling, you would rather stay with family if you knew someone that was there, or just maybe a coworker, someone that you knew, not exactly family, but someone that you knew. You would just stay in their guest house. So it's like if your friend has an extra room in her house, you would just stay there. It wasn't like an actual hotel or anything. But since everyone was doing this traveling to go fill out the census, because or else we know the punishments would have been so harsh, so everyone was traveling and moving to fill out these censuses. and there was no guest rooms available where they were. They couldn't find any place to stay. Most houses would have been shared with the animals that the family kept. Houses had 2 levels, the upper level where people slept, and the ground floor where the animals slept at night and the family lived during the day. The animals were a kind of central heating at night, keeping the house warm. The guest room was often an area on the upper level or even a hut put on the flat roof of the house. So there they just kind of gave us some imagery for us to imagine. So there was 2 floors, and on the first floor, that's where the people slept. But on the bottom floor, that's where the animals stayed at night to keep the house warm, I guess, because there's more body heat, I guess they would say. So it kept the family warm. And then they continue. As many people would have traveled to Bethlehem for the census, all the houses, or certainly upper levels, were full. Many people think that Jesus was probably born in September or October, during Sukkot, the Jewish feast of Tabernacles, rather than during December. During the festival, Jews lived outside in temporary shelters. So once again, they're saying how since there was so many people traveling that everything was full, there was nowhere for them to stay. And they also said that one theory is, because we don't actually know the exact birthday of Jesus, because like we were saying how there's no real way of recording all that down, but we created December 25th to represent, for us to have a day that we can say, okay, this is the day we're all going to celebrate Jesus. And if we think about it, it doesn't matter what his actual birthday was. It matters that we're coming together to celebrate him. And it doesn't matter if his birthday was in the spring, the fall, or whenever, but it's a day for us to come together and reflect and thank Jesus. So since there was nowhere for them to sleep, it continues. So Joseph and Mary probably went to sleep with the animals on the lower level, where it was common to have a manger cut into a wall where you put the animal food, or possibly out in a stable, cave, or even a covered market stall that sold animals. So they were in a place with animals, and it could have been that lower level where the animals were, or it could have been in a stable or a cave or somewhere where they had animals, and they had the manger, which is like the food tray for animals. It was custom in those times to wrap a newborn baby very tight in long bandages, called swaddling cloths. The arms and legs of the baby were also wrapped so they couldn't move. This was done because they thought it helped the baby to grow strong and straight limbs. And as no proper crib was available, the new baby boy was placed in a manger, or the feeding tray. So, since they were in a stable, in an area with animals, and they didn't have a crib, they didn't have anything, and Mary gave birth, then they had to place him in the manger. They used that as a crib, where the animals were fed. And this is really significant to us because it shows how someone that's so beyond us, so amazing, so phenomenal as Jesus, was born in such a simple way. He wasn't born as a king in a castle with all this stuff. He was born so simply, and he still is so perfect, so our example of what we follow. So it's saying that it doesn't matter your wealth or where you were born or whatever that, it just matters on who you are personally. And the only thing the article continues on to mention is that we don't know that exactly Jesus was born on 0 BC, because BC is before Christ, and then afterwards is how we started counting our years. So it doesn't mean, we don't know exactly that he was born on year 0, but they estimated that when they were calculating, just like the birthday. It's just a way for us to recognize the significance of the event and to think about it and to really reflect on it and thank him for what he does. It doesn't matter what day it really was or what day his real birthday was. It's just a way for us to focus on him for one day, at least one day of the year, even though we should do it every year, every day of the year. So as we can see, the birth of Jesus, it wasn't anything crazy. He wasn't born in a castle with 1 million people. He wasn't born anywhere fancy. It wasn't like they had hospitals. He was born with animals, and his crib was where the animals ate. So he was born really simple ways, and just because you're born simple ways or whatever you came from or your family, that doesn't mean you can't be a great person too, and we should try and follow his example no matter who we are, where we came from. And now in the book Spiritism 101, there's 2 pages, and they're about Jesus, and it's not about the birth of Jesus, but it's just some of the concepts and things that Jesus brought to us, and that's important to know about Jesus. It says, Jesus is the spirit responsible for the creation of our planet. When he incarnated on earth, he taught us the supreme law of unconditional love. Love your neighbors, including the enemies. The existence of Jesus was an example of doing good, forgiveness of sins, and charity towards all, so his life serves us to follow as a model. His teachings of humility and love were recorded in the gospel and are moral guidelines for us. Jesus is recognized as a model and a guide for humanity. His life is the way to know the truth. So Jesus, he created our earth that we so love, because without earth, who knows where we would be. And while he was here incarnated on earth, he taught us basically what we should strive to be, who our real model is. When people look up at celebrities or their favorite teacher, of course those are good things to look up to, but the one above all of them who we should truly follow is Jesus. There's this little song that I know the kids at our center sing all the time, and it's called Jesus, You're My Superhero. And that's kind of what it really is about, because it's not about idolizing a superhero or Barbie or any of those things. It's about idolizing Jesus, because he gave us he was the perfect role model. He was perfect, although we say nobody's perfect and we all have flaws to us, not Jesus. Jesus was perfect. So he's the ideal model for us to follow. He's the real superhero. And while on earth, he taught us so many things, but some of the key things were how to do good things, not to do an eye for an eye and the harsh rules of the time, but to do good things and to love everyone and to forgive people's sins, not to hold things against people, and just be kind and have charity and gratefulness towards all people. And what he did, he made it seem so easy, but it's stuff people still today struggle with and struggle to understand and practice. These pages also say how the greatest miracle that Jesus performed was the revolution that his teaching of love and forgiveness caused in humans. This message was able to change them, making them become good beings, thus transforming the world. So, with Jesus basically teaching us how to love and to be kind, it didn't only change one person, it changed everyone, and it showed society that we have to be nicer and more compassionate and caring, and while making each individual person better, it also made our society better, our world better as a whole. And lastly, they gave a little section called What Did Jesus Teach? Jesus' teachings are in the Gospels. We highlight the Sermon of the Mount. They are behavioral lessons that dictate the principles that lead to righteousness, such as humility, compassion, gentleness, peace, fairness, and purity of heart. They can be considered as a summary of the teachings regarding the access to the spiritual world. And then they list them, 1 through 9. 1. Blessed are the poor in spirit. 2. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness. Blessed are you blessed are you when people insult you, perspect you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. So it's saying that basically what he's teaching us is that if you're following what Jesus said and you're striving for good and righteousness and all those other characteristics that make us so perfect if we could achieve all of them, and that we're trying to be peaceful, we're trying to open our hearts to others, we're trying to follow Jesus' teachings, and maybe we'll get shut down, maybe we'll get laughed at, but he's saying the ones who are following me, who are trying to do the right thing, they will be blessed. The ones that are trying to become better, trying to learn these better morals. And that's what he taught us. He taught us that we're not going to be perfect. Yeah, we're not going to be quite like him, but we can get to that if we keep working at it, if we keep practicing, and we get more of these wonderful virtues. Jesus brought so much to our earth in just the short time that he was here that it's still impacting us so many years later. And we have to take this day, or 2 days, Christmas Eve too, we have to take those 2 days to really reflect on all that he brought us, and try and put into practice what he teaches. Try and find one thing that he has taught and try and put into practice. If it's to love your neighbors, even your enemies, try and be nice to someone you don't really like, or open up to them, or try and create peace instead of creating drama at school. Try and do one thing that he would support, that he wants us to do, that he taught us to do. And remember to thank him and think about him during Christmas, because we should be doing that every day throughout the whole entire year, but at least we can take this one special moment to thank him for all that he's done. And a great way by thanking him is to do something that he taught us to do something nice for someone else. Not get caught up in all the presents, but think about the true meaning of Christmas. Before we leave off today, I'd like to leave you guys with the Daily Book of Classic Quotations for today's date, December 20th. Facing problems. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. James Baldwin. Admitting the problem is the first step towards change may sound corny, but is often true. We can't do better until we admit that we're not doing well. We're all pretty good at trying to hide and ignore problems for as long as possible. Maybe it's just a temporary thing, we think. Maybe it's not that bad, and no one else will notice. Maybe it's not a problem at all. Everyone else does it too. When we argue with ourselves or others that a problem isn't really a problem, the chances are it really is a problem. I'll try to be honest with myself about my own problems and shortcomings. I may not be able to change all of them, but I can't change any of them until I admit they exist. So I hope you all have a wonderful Christmas and holiday break. How many weeks you have off, so many days you have off school, and I hope you give all the presents you were hoping to give and get all the presents you were hoping to get, but after all of it, think about the true meaning of Christmas. I'm Bia, and this is Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Cardiac Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.